Praise the Lord. Welcome to this morning time. Reading from Genesis chapter 27 from verse 5 onwards. Now Rebekah was listening while Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for a game to bring home, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Behold, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying, 'Bring me some game and prepare a delicious meal for me so that I may eat and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death.' So now, my son, listen to me as I command you. Go now to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats from there, so that I may prepare them as a delicious meal for your father, such as he loves. Then you shall bring it to your father, that he may eat, so that he may bless you before his death." Now, here is a chapter which in many ways are very sad and tragic, where you see a dysfunctional family. Father and one son on one side, and mother and the younger son on the other side. There is no communication. There is no trust. All of them acting against one another. God was the one who instituted families. And one of the first things that God said was, they are no longer 2, they are 1. And here we see, going against that very idea of God, instead of working as a team, they are fighting and conniving into one another and to scheming against one another, deceiving one another. Now let us look at this portion and see what went wrong in this family. I want to see this mostly from the perspective of Jacob, the younger son, because he was the one whom we read about in the remaining most part of Genesis, how God had dealt with him. So, what happened? Now, the blessing that Isaac decided to bless his older son was a blessing that was given to Abraham. And the blessing had 3 parts. Number 1, the blessing of the land. He said, "I will give this land that you walk to you." That means the blessing of where they lived and the whole land belonged. God said he will give to you. And since Isaac was a promised son, all the blessing he inherited. And in fact, in the next generation, there are 2, Esau and Jacob. Naturally, the older son will inherit that, but Jacob had an eye on that. So the first part of the blessing is the land. Second part of the blessing was the offspring. God said, "I will bless you, and your descendants will be like the stars of the sky, the sand of the sea." So there is this amazing promise of future generations. That means he will become a great nation, a blessing of children and offspring. That is the second part. And the third blessing, I would say the most important and great, is the spiritual blessing. God said, "All those who bless you will be blessed, and all those who curse you will be cursed." That means nobody can curse you and then be blessed. If anyone curses you, he will be accursed, because no one can curse a blessed man from God. I don't know how he understood that, but it was a great and tremendous promise. And one of the things he said was, "Through you, all the nations of the world will be blessed." And what is blessing? The Hebrew word translated bless in is barak, most often used. It means to praise, to congratulate, or salute, which we see throughout the Old Testament. But another Hebrew word for blessing is isher, which is also translated as happiness. Job 5:17 says, "Blessed is the man whom God corrects, so do not despise the discipline of the Almighty." We further see that in Psalms, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers." So you see, the blessedness means happiness. That means happy is the man whom God corrects. Happy is a man who walks in the counsel of God. So true blessing from God involves both of these things. Praise from God and also happiness that will come because of our obedience and aligning to the will of God. Now, if you truly want this kind of blessing, I don't know when people say that they are blessed. Many times, when they are materially blessed, when they get a job, when they build a house, or when they get good marks in their exam, when they have a child, they say, "We are blessed." Well, of course it is a blessing. But true blessing will bring eternal joy and happiness to us. And only way that you can receive that blessing is when you come in line with what God is thinking about you, when you seek after Him. So in this incident, we see Esau wanted that blessing, but what blessing was he looking for? He immediately went to hunt for the game, and he wanted to get that, but I believe he was only looking at the material part of that blessing. He wanted land, he wanted material possession, grain and oil and wine and all that. But I believe Jacob understood the importance of that blessing from the spiritual perspective. He knew that these things are not just temporal blessings. They were of eternal value. I don't know how deep he knew that, but he knew that. Because in the Esau's case, we see that he went ahead and married Hittite woman. He sold his birthright for a morsel of food. From all those actions, we see that he did not care anything about the eternal side of that blessing, the spiritual side of that blessing. He was only considered about the temporal nature of that blessing. So what happened in this case? Rebekah overheard what Isaac said, and he told his son to go and make a meal which his father liked, and to deceive him to get the blessing. Now, one thing you must realize is that Jacob and Rebekah, to some extent, knew the significance of this blessing. But the way that they moved forward to get that blessing was absolutely wrong. So, it is possible that you pursue something that is legitimate in an illegitimate way. Pursue something that is right in the wrong way. Now let me try to illustrate. In the early part of the ministry of Jesus, the Spirit led him to the wilderness to be tempted of Satan. And the devil came to him, and the first temptation was, he knew that Jesus was hungry and he is in need of food. So he told him, "Look, there are a lot of stones here. You are a son of God. And if you are the son of God, why don't you turn these stones to bread? Because you're hungry. You need bread now." It was right. He was hungry. It was right that bread could fulfill his hunger. But remember the reply that Jesus said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God." So how did he counter this? He could have done that because he was indeed the Son of God. But he need not prove that he is the Son of God by converting that stones to bread. It was not in his Father's will to do that. We later see that the angels came and ministered to him. He had his bread, but he was not willing to give into the temptation of going outside the will of God to get that. My dear friends, this is a very important lesson that we need to learn in our Christian walk with the Lord. There are many legitimate needs that we have while we live in this world. They could be physical, they could be emotional, they could be spiritual. And the temptation that we face is that to pursue those needs with the blessing of God, but in the wrong way, by deceiving people, by telling lies, by scheming against others, by grabbing others. But Jesus never did that. In fact, he had all the privileges of the Son of God, but he did not use those privileges outside the will of God. So this is the important lesson that we learn from this. Because Jacob pursued that, he had to go through so much of problems. We will study about that in the coming days. He had to be separated from his father and his mother. He had to live and wander alone. He was exposed to the schemes and deception of his father-in-law. His reward was delayed for so many years. He had to work extra years in order to get his wife, and so on and so forth. He had wandered and paid a heavy price for this. And we will also do that if we go outside the will to pursue the right things. The final thing I want to say is the sovereignty of God. No one can thwart the plans of God. Not even the most evil acts in the world can do that. Take the crucifixion of Jesus. It was the most evil act in the world. But even that, God used to bring the greatest blessing upon the whole mankind. So if someone does that, deceives us, someone is scheming against us, someone cheated us, don't worry. Nobody can change God's plan for you. For God says in Jeremiah, the plans that I have for you is good and not evil. That means if God has good plans for us, for his children, no one can thwart that plan by deception or by cunning or by cheating or by grabbing. So we can truly rest in God, because our inheritance is not what he gives. Our inheritance is himself. God said, I am your greatest reward. He did not say, I will give you a reward. I am your reward. When God is my reward, then I don't need to worry about anything else. He's with me, and that's all I need. God bless.